Okay, so for those of you who have been with me over a period of time, you know, one of the first things I like to do is review. So if you didn't know that about me, now you do. So we're going to actually talk a little bit as a review, what we have just finished studying, and that is the 2 studies we did in the previous book. And so we're going to talk about them just a little bit. What I want to know, for those of you who were paying attention during those studies, from which book did our study come from, the first part of the book? From which book did we have, did our study come from? We were
That
studying
last book.
in the last book. Not the last study, but the first study in the last book.
Right. So you know that was like 6 months ago. Ooh.
Well, I thought maybe somebody might have taken a note.
Right. I know the second one was First Kings. I'm trying to
Okay,
think, was it Ephesians?
not that one. The first Kings was the second one.
Right. Was the first one Ephesians?
Nope.
No.
Anybody can remember? Anybody jotted anything down?
Revelations.
It was Revelation.
It was Revelation.
It was Revelations.
Revelation 21, 9 through 12.
Yeah, it was Revelations. That was how we approached the topic last time. One of the first part of the book, because that particular book was talking about the church that God desires. So it was Revelations, starting with that. And so,
Mom?
Yes.
That what Kings is the one where we was talking about
We're not there yet. Don't mess up my review. We're not there yet.
Okay.
Save it. You'll be right on time getting the kudos. All right. Who was John writing to in those lessons? Because we're talking about the church God desires. So who was John writing to?
Churches.
The 7 churches, certainly. Are you looking on my paper?
No.
Okay, he was writing to the 7 churches. Now here we go. Can anybody name the 7 churches?
Give you a few. I give you Philadelphia.
Okay, Philadelphia.
Smyrna.
Smyrna.
Okay.
Montesa, Pergamum.
Okay, Thyatira. Okay.
Sardis.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Sardis, isn't it?
Sardis, yep.
Laodicea.
Yep.
Mhm.
2 more. 2 more. Ephesus was one of them, one of the 2.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the other one, anybody? Pergamum.
Right. Montesa, that
Pergamum.
early.
I
Okay.
said-
Oh, did you say it? My bad. I didn't hear it. Okay. Didn't hear that one. All right. So those are the churches that John was writing to in the book of Revelations, because what our study was about was the things that they weren't doing, the things that they did do, and John was trying to get them straight, because the whole theme was the church that God desires. So if we know in what ways we were going astray, we can fix ourselves and get back on track properly. Okay, so with that in mind, the 7 main points to that particular study, these are gentle reminders of those 7 points. Those 7 points are: ground everything you do in love for Christ. We need not fear because we are rich in God's grace. When it comes to biblical truth about Christ, there is no room for compromise. Purity in all things impact your service for Christ. Stay alert and focused on the things of God. Faithfully trust God as you minister to others. And God provides all we need as we pursue Christ daily. Now, those of you might be thinking, well, I don't quite remember it like that. Hint, hint. If you happen to have that book that we were using the last time, go to the first study. In fact, you don't even have to go that far. Go into the table of contents and you will see most of this stuff right there. And then when you look through the study itself, the very first study, you will see that the point of the study, that's all I basically have listed. Those were your main 7 points that things that we should remember, a gentle reminder for us. Okay, that was the first half of the last book. Then we came into the second half of that book. Anybody know what we were studying at that point? Tyreek, what did he do? Where'd he go? This was his chance to get his kudos. Now where is he?
I know, right?
All right.
Sorry, I'm driving. I'm sorry. I was trying to hit the unmute button.
Oh, we
Don't have
want
an
you to
accident
cry.
trying to do that, okay? But
Um,
go ahead.
Can I answer my
Yes,
kudos?
your answer.
We was
One you
talking
was
about,
trying to give
Elijah,
before.
Elijah
Okay.
and how he's been frustrated with
What
God.
book? What book?
Kings.
Okay, we were in First Kings, all right? And he's already told us that we were doing Elijah. And basically we were looking at service and how Elijah served God. And that's basically what that was about. So that was the last study that we just finished. Well, who can tell me, how can we serve God based on what we learned about Elijah? And you really should have a pretty good hint at that, because when John did his, he had you guys to kind of go back and think about those things again. So here they are coming up again. So how can we serve God in the same way that Elijah served God?
The last one was leading others to serve.
Okay,
It was leading with loyalty, or serving with loyalty,
okay, serving with loyalty.
serving with trust,
Okay, trust.
serving with love.
That wasn't one of the typos. but-
Wasn't,
No, but we need to do that. I mean, it's not something.
sounds
we need
about
to
right.
throw out.
Yes. Sounds like it should fit in there.
Yeah, it should be in there,
Um,
but it wasn't there like that.
Right. Serve
Courage.
with courage. Yeah.
Okay, with courage, yep.
With
prayer. With
Prayer.
prayer, yep.
What about honor? Was it honor?
That wasn't one of the titles of what we were dealing with, but yes, we should. I mean, you guys are giving me answers that should have been included perhaps, but they were not particularly included in the
Right,
study that we
the
were
main
doing.
lesson
And
topics.
basically, that's kind of why I asked the question in the same way as Elijah did, because I was trying to keep you guys in with the such study that we did. John did, and that was the last one. Well, not the last one, but the next to the last one, to serve even when discouraged.
Oh, yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because we can
Say
still serve.
loyalty,
I'm sorry.
loyalty.
Yes, someone did say that. Thank you. Yep. So those were the ways in which Elijah served God. And it was also a reminder to us. So the 6 points that I'm going to give you now are gentle reminders from this study to tell us, remind us how we should be serving God. And we should serve God. Serving God often calls for courage. Service to God should be fueled by trust in Him. We step into the lives of others by praying for them. God deserves our loyalty and service. We don't let discouragement keep us from serving. And then after all of those things, we lead others to serve God. So basically, if you had to sum up the two lessons, the two studies that we did in the previous book, those points that I just gave you pretty much sums up what the studies were about. Okay, so that's our little review, just to kind of bring that. And I just wanted to also point out, for those of you who joined us on Sunday for discipleship class, you're going to hear some things that remind you of that. Because when we were in discipleship class, we talked about what on Sunday morning? Anybody remember? You should. Sunday morning's session was about what? I'm talking discipleship class, Sunday morning. We just
Faith.
listened.
Faith produces perseverance.
Assurance, faith and assurance. Assurance. But we were talking about faith, right? Guess
Mhm.
what we're going to be talking about now for the next 12 weeks. Anybody can guess?
Right.
We're gonna be talking about that. That's so good. I'm so glad you guys caught that. Okay, so now I asked you guys to read as much of the book of James as you could before tonight. I wasn't expecting that you would finish it. Some of you may have, and that's really cool. But you know, if you only got a couple of chapters in, you know, don't beat yourself up because of it. I just wanted to get you started because it's going to help us understand the background. Is going to help us understand who he was talking to and what the time frame was like. So as we go through this study, and I don't mean just tonight, but as we go through this study, it'll give us a better idea of what's going on if we understand the book of James. So now we're ready to get started because our new study will be using the book of James to guide us to live out our faith. There's that word again, by putting our faith on display. So I want to read some things to you. Here we go. One of the first things I want to read to you, I'm probably tonight, I'll be doing maybe a little bit more reading. Next week, we'll be doing a little bit more talking. Okay, so bear with me this week. Serve God and others. Faith is not something that applies only to what we believe. Even as James pointed out in James 2:14 through 26, our faith is evident in what we do in all aspects of life. Our lives are to be lives of service, and it is through such service that we put our faith on display. So that's kind of where we're going with this study. We're talking about putting our faith on display, and we're going to talk about how to do that. We're going to put our faith on display, and this is an overview of the whole study, this whole first study. We're going to put our faith on display in hard times, in our relationships, in our actions, in our conversations, in facing the enemy, and in our priorities. That's how we're going to put our faith on display. And so that's an overview of this first study. For those of you who have the book, if you'll look at the table of contents, you will find that those things that I just listed are right there, and it's under study 1, okay? So this study is going to help us to live out our faith, and it's going to help us to put our faith on display by the things that I've just mentioned. So that's why I'm saying for the next 12 weeks, because if you guys remember, we do Life Change Growth Group, and we stay in the same topic for 2 weeks, and there are 6 topics. So we're going to be talking about this for the next 12 weeks. All right. And with that in mind, we're going to go, and I'm going to read something else to you. So bear with me. And this is what I want you to think about as we do this study, living out your faith. We're quite good at compartmentalizing different areas of life: work, family, leisure, politics, and religion. And we have a tendency to do that. We kind of block things off into an area, and we have everything very nicely blocked off. And many times we think that those things are not supposed to come together in any kind of way. And many times as Christians, we believe that each of those things is something different, except when you come to religion. And then the things that are God's, we put there, and everything else, God doesn't need to touch those things. Well, we kind of know, for those of us who have been here a little bit, we kind of know that that's not quite true. That's not quite true. Okay. However, we are not to separate faith from any other areas of life. Our faith should speak into our work, into our family, to our leisure, and into our politics. Our faith and relationship with Christ should be the one box in life into which everything else is placed. The practical book of James helps us to see how we are to live out our faith in Christ in every area of life. In other words, if we say we live by faith, a life of faith should be revealed through behavior that lines up with the word of God. So now, if you haven't thought about it too much before, think about it now. We need to stop learning to compartmentalize everything, keeping God out of it, thinking that God only belongs in one box, and that's maybe church, some people think of it as church or religion, however you have to, thought of that. And he belongs in that box only. And what this study is trying to get us to hear and see is that it's all the boxes. God belongs in every last one of them. God should be in your life in so many different ways because he is all inclusive in everything. So in our work, in our play, in our family, in relationships, in our politics, in everything we do, God should be in it. And therefore, if we are having God in it and living out our faith by displaying it, then we've got all the right boxes checked. Okay?
Amen.
So with that in mind, here we go. Think of a time you have faith in a situation. You turned that situation over to God and felt tremendous peace that he was in control and that everything would turn out in your favor. How many of you have had that feeling? You're looking at this and you're going, okay, this is overwhelming. I can't do this. Then you know what? Let me give it to God. I don't mean just give it to him and then try to pull it back. I'm not talking about that. I mean, really give it to him, put it in his hands, close your eyes and walk away because God's got it. How many of us have done that and it turned out in a favorable way? Yeah. Okay. And some of us have not done that and looked at it and went, why didn't I do that? And then the next time around, you do it. And then you think to yourself, how come I keep trying to do it myself? When every time I put it in God's hands and don't snatch it back, leave it alone and let him take care of it, it always turns out so much more wonderfully better. And when I do it, it turns out to be, well, not a total mess, but close to it. And I know for myself personally, I think about that. I'm going, why do you try to do it yourself when God do a better job? So, why don't you think, let me put it in his hands, let him do it so it can turn out right, rather than me saying, oh, I can do this, I got this, I can take care of it. And then it gets messed up and I look at it, and if I get in trouble, then it's God, look what the mess is going on. Can you help a sister out? And I know he's probably going, if you had given it to me, I'd have worked that mess out for you and it wouldn't have been a mess. But oh no, you thought you could handle it. Good thing he don't leave it like that. He picks you up, dust you off, put you back on the path and go on, darling, my child, go on. Thank you, God. It was a mess. If you hadn't stepped in, it'd have been a bigger mess. All right. When we talk about faith, we often talk about having faith in or believing God for something. And that was the talk that we had on Sunday when we were talking about faith in assurance, having assurance and faith, having that kind of faith. And we were talking about having faith in a lot of areas. And someone was saying that we have to have it in God. That's the first step. And what I want you guys to hear tonight is that was step one. And now we're going to have some other steps to go along with that step, okay? And you have to have that first step. If you don't have the first step, you're done because you can't get this done, all right? So we definitely have to have faith in believing in God for something. We have to have that. That is the first step. Consequently, we apply faith to a situation and trust God with it. And that's what we should do. Listen to some of these other steps though. The challenge for many believers, however, is knowing how not to limit our faith, not to limit it. When we have a difficult situation or scenario, we give only that part of ourselves to God. Yes, we get the victory and we thank God for it, but we continue to live our lives with so many other parts unsubmitted to the Lord. That's what I was talking about with those various boxes that we have. And we have, this is politics, this is family, this is church, this is, we've got all these boxes and we think God is only supposed to be in the church one. And he's not supposed to be in all the others. Well, this is trying to help us see that's not quite the way it should be, folks. God should be in all of your boxes. Okay. Okay. Therefore, we experience a limited victory conquering a situation while struggling in every other area of our lives. So what they're trying to get us to see is that if God is in all, if all the boxes are in God and all our faith is in that, we're not going to have the same kind of struggles. But when you compartmentalize everything and have God over here by himself in one box and not in the rest of your lives, when you go to him for a particular area, a particular thing, he solves that for you. But the rest of your life is still, I won't say messed up, but confused. Let's put it that way, because you're thinking that I don't have to think a particular way in my politics. I don't have to think a particular way in my relationships. I don't have to think a particular way for my family. I only have to think a particular way for, church and God. But when church and God, that's the way I'm supposed to be thinking for that. But for everything else, I can think however I choose to. And that's kind of where we're trying to take that away from us as our thoughts. But God wants all of us. He is calling us to live out our faith in all things. He wants our faith to be on display for the world to see. Many believers are off to a good start because of Hebrews 11:1, which states, now faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. You may have the King James Version that says something a little bit different, but the wording might be different, but the concept, the idea is the same. And this verse informs our prayers, and we use it habitually as we prayed for God to work out various trials and meet various needs. But there is so much more to the exercise of faith in our lives. If we look back a few verses to Hebrews 10:39 and see faith as an all-encompassing charge. But we are not those who draw back and are destroyed, but those who have faith and are saved. In this particular verse, we are invited to see the impact of faith in our entire lives, not in sections, not in boxes, but in all of our lives, in all parts of our lives. So for us, this is a 12-week study. And this 12-week Bible study from the book of James, we will explore just how to live out our faith in all things. As we walk through these sessions, we will be encouraged to apply faith to every aspect of our lives so we can walk victoriously according to the will of God. Any thoughts about that? I know it was a lot that I read, but.
Yeah, you said faith a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're taught to have faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mention, believers a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Believing. But then there's belief. Many of us struggle in our faith, and struggle is really like a story. It's not that we don't have faith, we don't believe. It's not that we're struggling, we don't believe. And the more you kept saying it, I had to look up the word belief.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna put it in the chat. And it reads, an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. His belief in the value of hard work, or the belief in the value of faith. Mm-hmm. Then it says trust, faith, or confidence in someone or something. We know that's something to be God. Mm-hmm. Or the spirit. My wife gets telling me about something, boy, you better say it ain't something, you better say the spirit. So I'll say, I'm good for saying something told me. What? You mean the spirit? And I'm like, yeah, the spirit.
Okay.
No, if you're going to say what I said, we're going to be accurate in what I said. You need to know who's talking to you.
Okay. Yeah, but you get the point, right?
Okay.
Thank you for following that up. But we really want to just look at our belief system. See, I believe, you want to cultivate your faith with an unwavering amount of belief. Like, you just got to believe. We just don't believe enough. And I just want to,
now let us think about that for a moment. In fact, let us go and look at Hebrews 1. I believe that's what it was. No, excuse me, Hebrews 11:1. And based on what you just heard from, Coach here, let us look at that and see if we can understand his thought pattern for that. 11:1. And this is the NLT version. Somebody do the King James version so that we can hear both versions. Because the
Okay,
NLT,
I have the King James.
okay, read the King James version for us, would you please, Sister Deb?
Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Okay, all right. And can I get someone to read another version like the NLT or the NIV, or the Message is pretty rough, but if you have the message.
I have it.
Okay, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Hebrews 11:1 NLT. Faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see.
Okay, so when we think about faith, because Coach was saying belief and faith, and sometimes we get those words kind of tangled up, if you will. They are really connected in a very strong way. What Hebrews 11:1 is saying, that our faith is coming in for things that we don't see happening yet. For instance, when you sit on a chair, you are under the impression that that chair is going to hold your weight and that there's not going to be a problem. And you don't think about it. You sit on that chair without even considering whether it will hold you or not. You have faith. That's faith. Not belief necessarily, but faith that that chair is going to hold your body. Now, if you sit on a chair and it doesn't hold your body, it will make you a little bit leery about just sitting on chairs from that point forward. You might, be one of those persons, be checking that chair out very carefully because of the fact that you sat on a chair a couple of times and the chair did not hold your weight. It crumbled, it cracked, it fell over, or whatever the case may be. After that, you're going to be one of those people looking at that chair, shaking it a little bit, making sure it's going to hold your weight before you sit on it. However, if you didn't have that experience, you would just sit in that chair because you're under the impression it's going to hold you. That's the kind of faith they're talking about. They're talking about having that kind of faith in God, that whatever he's going to be doing for you, even though you can't see it, you're having faith, you have faith that is going to happen. You have the hope that is going to happen, that hope, that faith, and actually belief. They're all tied in together. They're all interconnected. I think it's hard to have any one of them without having the others. Comments, questions, points, responses?
It's funny. The word belief is actually in the definition of faith. So that goes with what you're saying, that they're all connected.
They are. And sometimes we try so hard to disconnect them or try to make them separate things, but they're so intertwined, it's hard not to see them as connected things. Because, and we have done this before where we talked about what belief is, we talked about what faith is, we talked about hope, and it's hard to explain any one of them without talking about the other two. So they are definitely interconnected.
And inside of that, right, his belief in the value of hard work, right? And we all know that in James 2:26, faith without works is dead.
Yes.
So inside the faith, we must continue to work.
And that's what we're going to be learning, talking about, responding to, reminding ourselves about in this study. What this study wants us to hear, wants us to see, wants us to reconnect to if we've somehow disconnected to it, that is not just enough to believe in God and have faith in God. It's more than that. That's the first step. If you don't have that, you can't make the other steps. So you have to have it. But that's only the first step. What this study wants us to hear and see is that your works, the faith comes out in your works. And that's what you're putting on display. The works that you do for God, the things that you do in God's name, the things that God is showing you to do, the things that God is pushing you to do, and some of the things that he's leading you to do. That's where your faith comes in and is going to be on display. Now, we have to admit, A lot of times when we think that God is, or we know that God is telling us to do something, sometimes we're a little hesitant. We're like, that don't look right to me. I'm not so sure I want to do
I was,
that.
I was just gonna say, Mom. I was just gonna say, man, God is so good right now. He's using me. I was just gonna say, you're gonna be uncomfortable too
Mhm.
in the usage, and just know when you're uncomfortable, it's God. But
Yeah.
God said He got you.
Yep.
He said He
And
got
many
you.
times we're there. We're looking at something and we're going, oh, that don't look right. I don't know how I'm going to get it done. And you might be seeing one little small piece that God has given you, and you're trying to figure out what the end is going to look like. And that's what's making you nervous. And you're afraid to step out on the next thing because you don't know what's coming next. And you're going, are you sure about this, God? And is that really God talking to me? Or is that me? But that's where the faith come in. Tyreek?
But that's when experience comes in also.
Okay.
Because if you say you're a believer and God has proven himself to you over and over again, there's going to be a point where when you're going to come to your mind and be like, okay, I'm not going to worry about what everything looks like and what I have. I'm gonna just go on and do it like Nike, because God has proven to me that he never left me. He proven that he never forsaken me. So since he's proven all these things, I'm not going to worry about what my situation look like. I'm gonna trust in God and who God is to me, which is a protector, which is a provider. I'm gonna trust in all those things, because when I was at my low, God came. When I needed, God came. When I felt like me personally lacked, God was there. When I felt like man let me down, God was there for me. And when I was hurt, God was there. So since God was there, I'm not worried about what my situations is looking like, because God proven to me that he's better, that he's higher than that. He's proven that he can get me out. So I'm not really worried about my observation. I mean, not my observations, my
Situation.
that word. Thank you, Pop.
Yeah. And that the point that Tyreek just made kind of brings us back to the illustration I was talking about sitting on that chair. Well, and this is a strange way to say it, but God is the chair that's not going to ever break. So we can put our faith in him. He's going to always be that chair that we can sit on without even worrying about it, without thinking about it, without, being considering that the leg is going to break, the back is not going to hold up, the seat part is not going to, no, God is going to be that chair that never breaks, that never gets rusty, that never gets old, that never does anything negative. So you can always go to that chair and know it's going to be all right without ever thinking about it. And I know that's a strange way to put it, but I kind of want you to visualize the idea of sitting in a chair. And let me say it this way, and then think of ourselves resting in God the same way. That's the faith that we need. And that's the first step. If we don't have that, I can rest in God thought, then we can't do the rest. The rest is going to be impossible, because we have to be able to rest in God in that kind of way. So that's the first step. But that's not all of it. And that's what I want us to hear also, that that's not all of it. It can't be just that and leave it alone. I'm going to rest in God. I'm sitting in this chair resting and I'm not doing anything else. God said, oh, no, you don't, because there's some other stuff to be done. People need to see and understand why you have that kind of faith. That's where your faith on display is going to come into play. Okay. All right, let's go to James. Let's go to James 1. If you have the book, you can read it from there. If you don't, your tablet, your computer, the hard copy, whichever way. So let's go to James 1. And let's look at the first 12 verses. Oops. Okay, let's look at the first 12 verses. And can I have a reader to read for me, please? Let's do it this way so I can get more of you involved and so I can slow my talking down. Can I get someone to read the first 6 verses and then someone to read the last 6 verses?
I can read the first 6.
Okay, thank you very much. And can I get a volunteer for the last 6?
I can. I can read
Okay,
the
thank you.
rest.
Thank you, Minister Curtis. All right, let's go.
James 1:1. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes dispersed abroad, greetings. Consider it a great joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. Now, if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith without doubting, for the doubter is like the surging sea, driven and tossed by the wind.
Thank you, John A. Thank you very much. Minister Curtis?
All right, starting at verse 7. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord, being double-minded and unstable in all his ways. Let the brother of humble circumstances boast in his exaltation, but let the rich boast in his humiliation, because he will pass away like a flower of the field. For the sun rises, and together with scorching wind, dries up the grass. Its flowers fall off, and its beautiful appearance perishes. In the same way, the rich person will wither away while pursuing his activities. Blessed is the one who endures trials, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him.
Okay, so now, when we hear those verses, there should be some things that kind of stand out to us. Anything in particular that you hear from the verses that stand out as far as what the verses are saying to us? Okay, because I'm not talking about how you feel about the verse. I'm talking about what the verse is saying to you. There should be some things that stand out. You should be saying, oh, okay, so God is saying this, and okay, he's saying that. I'm looking for that kind of answer.
All right, what I got from this, for anybody, if you need wisdom, just ask God for wisdom. That's what it's saying. And he'll
Yes.
give you what you need. Just ask for it.
Okay,
And make sure no matter what you do, you're not wavering, that you're steadfast in whatever it is that you are going to do. Ask God for.
okay. So he's telling you, don't come to me wishy-washy and thinking you're
Ken-
gonna get it. You come to
Ken
me
took my
wishy-washy, it
answer.
ain't gonna happen. Go ahead, Tyree.
Ken took my answer.
Oh, he did. Well, he
Great
must have
minds
been
think
peeping on
alike,
the
bro.
paper. He was peeping off your
Man.
paper. What can I tell you?
Cheating.
John A?
So I know the scripture from the King James version, and
Okay.
let patience have her perfect work.
Mhm.
That is a work in progress, because it's going to be a testing of your faith.
Yep.
That's what it's. Oh, I'm sorry. Trying of your faith worketh patience,
Mhm.
and then it says let patience have her perfect work.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, but I want to quit. This is hard. I don't like it. This hurts. I'm tired. But it's the full effect won't come unless you endure hardness as a good soldier.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm actually, like, before I left my last job, it was a struggle with patience and the testing and trying of my faith. But I held on and I trusted God, and now I'm on a new job, and it was only because I let patience have her perfect work.
Okay. All right. All right. John?
I'm going to say in James 1:6a in the New Living Translation says, but when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and not in, not you.
Okay, and that's kind of what Kennedy was saying, that you can't be wavering. You can't, and I mentioned you can't go wishy-washy. If you go wishy-washy, it's not going to happen for you. God is telling you, don't come to me wishy-washy and think I'm going to get this thing done for you. You need to come with faith, unwavering faith. Faith, stop the kind of faith you have when you sit in that chair and know it's not going to fall down and break on you. That kind of faith. You need to come to me that way. Don't come to me wishy-washy.
And it says that such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord.
Okay, like I said, he's telling you, don't come wishy-washy. So to fit right in with these verses that we're reading from the verses from James,
Yeah,
listen
Tyreek
to
has
this.
to say something.
Oh, Tyreek, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, for me, it was 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres on, well, I'm reading an NIV version.
Okay,
Blessed is the one who perseveres on the trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. For me, that scripture brought me back to school through college, because there was a certain point where I was going to quit, because I was like, this school ain't for me. It wasn't for me in high school, and I'm seeing now that it ain't for me now. But now when I think about it, having gone through all of that to get my degrees and look where I'm at now, I persevered through it. I kept going. And one of the things that God put in me was to see the future. And I'm not talking like a psychic, but see myself where I want to be at
okay,
through God.
seeing your future self.
Yeah. And when I look back now, I'm like, I'm glad I stayed faithful in this. I'm glad I didn't quit, because what if I did, I would be somewhere else doing
Okay.
something different.
Now, and there are several things that I'm seeing here that God is telling us that we're going to have trials. That's the first thing. He's telling us, don't think that this is going to be a cakewalk and everything is going to be hunky-dory, flowers springing up, birds tweeting, sun shining bright with just the right amount of clouds and no rain cloud. Don't think it's going to be like that. He's telling you there's going to be various trials. So he's telling us that. And that the testing is going to, produce our faith. We have to go through the testing. We have to endure, and that's when our faith is going to show up. So that was one of the things that I got out of that. And it's going to be mature and complete, lacking nothing if you endure. And the other part, I think you guys have already said that, when you want wisdom, you go to God and you ask for it. But God said, don't come to me wishy-washy asking for anything, because it's not going to happen. So you need to come with that. And the fact that when you endure, when you finish with it all, God has a reward for you. So he's telling you it's going to be some trials and some stuff coming at you. He's telling you if you need wisdom and help to get through it, don't come to him wishy-washy, but come to him with the faith that you need to, the faith and believing that he's going to take care of it for you. And he's telling you also that when it's all said and done, I'm going to reward you, which when you come right down to it, how we think as people, we like the idea of being acknowledged, rewarded for the things we do. So, and I'm obviously, God knows that. He's like, okay, if you do this right, I'm going to reward you. And he's saying to himself, that ought to get them going in the right direction. That ought to, because I know that's what they want. So that ought to get them going in the right direction. Now, with all of this that we're saying, I'm going to read a quote from Augustine, and I want your reaction to it. Trials come to prove and improve us. Trials come to prove and improve us. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think it means, and how do you see that fitting into our study? Trials come to prove and improve us. Okay.
Well, I think it kind of goes on the lines of what Coach B was saying earlier, as far as if you listen to God, there are going to be times where you're going to think that you're going to be kind of like weary, you're kind of like scared to do it, but you just got to trust and just do it.
Okay.
And if you don't do it, I guess you're not meant. That's why I say you make or break you, for lack of better words.
Okay. Anybody else? For a minute there, I thought the crickets had invaded us. Anyone else?
I think that the way the lesson explains it to us is that trials are like a refinery soap that's getting us stronger and making us more like what we should be, giving us strength.
Okay.
And really bringing out what's really in us.
Okay.
And so just like gold is tried by fire, and if it's not gold, it'll burn. But when you are being tested, when you come through, then you come out like pure gold.
That's right. That's right. Anyone else? Trials come to prove and improve us. Anybody else?
I feel like with anything, without like with so like coach, when he's doing this fitness thing, like unless there's restraint, you can't really know how strong you are. And so I feel like you're saying with trials, you can't, like, peace can only be seen in the midst of a situation where you have to wait. And I'm mixing up, I'm sorry. Peace can only be seen in the midst of like things going crazy where you need peace. Patience can only come in the midst of something where you have to wait. And so I'm looking at it where these trials only come so that we can, like you said, prove that these things are evident, but it also improves us because as we go through them, we learn how to do it better and how to improve as we go.
Okay, thank you. John?
I think the same thing that Tyreek was talking about, where he's talking about experiences.
Okay,
Once you go through the experiences, you say, well, God done did it once, so he's I guess grooming us. It's like the I guess the potter and the clay.
okay,
You know, he's refining us so that once we go through that, then we know that, hey, God got this and I'm a better person.
okay. Anyone else? Any other
Hey,
thoughts?
hey, Mom, could I read this right here? It says, what are spiritual benefits we stand to gain from experiencing trials?
Not yet. I'm
Not yet,
there
okay. All right, all right.
No, all right, Holy Spirit, you're just giving folk all kinds of stuff. Stop it. All right. What I wanted you guys to think about with that expression is that it comes to prove who we are. The trials are going to prove us. If we get ourselves in something that we feel like we can handle on our own, and we do, we try to, we think we got it all worked out and it doesn't really work out, it proves to us, or it should be proving to us, that we don't have enough faith in God for him to do it. So when the trials come, they're going to prove either we are faithful and have enough faith in God to handle it. And when we take that road, it improves us. We become better people. We become more Christ-like and less us-like. So that's saying is where what I'm thinking of is we've got to prove ourselves faithful to God, in God, believing in God, believing that he will take care of everything. We've got to prove that by our actions, by our thoughts, by what we do, by what we say, how we carry ourselves, what our lives look like, so that with all of that, when the trials hit us and mess with us, with all of that, we become better people. We become less ourselves and more Christ. And I think that's a good way to think of it, because the trials are going to prove who we are. Are we just talking that stuff, or are we really believing what we're talking? Here comes your belief again, Coach. And it also will improve us. It will take us from being who we are right now to being closer to being more Christ-like.
Walk the walk or talk the talk.
Right.
And I was going to say, Mom, you're the, this is so great, this conversation. Mom, you're a teacher, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you're an educator, right? Well, God is the master educator.
Yes, he is.
And you know, Mom, as a teacher, you gave out tests.
Mhm.
And so God has given us all these tests during the trials. He's given us a test of our patience, right? He's given us a test of our disciplines.
Mhm.
God gave us everything that we need when he birthed us. Now
Mhm.
here on earth, we got to put him to the test.
Yep.
And it's up to us, you know, if we're going to pass the test or not. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't.
Yeah.
But it's
That's a good way
all,
to think of that too.
Yeah.
That's a good way to think of that.
well, looking at you and knowing that you're an educator, a teacher, you gave me that. So thank you. Just, you know, looking at you, and yeah, and God is the master educator, the philosopher, the philanthropist, whatever you want to call him. But yeah,
He's all of that.
he's all that.
Yeah. All that and a bag of chips.
With the dip.
And that's a good way to think about it. Because if you think about it as a classroom situation where a teacher is giving you information and then teacher gives you the test, and when you come through the test with the right grades, feeling good about yourself, you're better off than you were before it happened. So if you think about it like that, that's a really a good way. I know it's earthly, but it's a good way to remember and to think about it. That's what the trials are going to do for us. We're students in a classroom. God is going to give us information to help us, and he's done that already. And then trials are going to come. Some of them he's going to send our way. Some of them he's just going to turn his head and let it happen our way. Whichever way it is, he's letting it happen, sending it to happen so that we can prove that we are faithful and that our faith is in him and how he's going to deal with us. And once that's done, that's our A+. We're better off than we were before it happened. And now let us not pretend we're not going to be happy with these trials. That's not something we're going to look at and go, oh, I'm just like so happy this is happening. That's not how it's going to go.
Why me?
Yeah, that's mostly what we say. I ain't do nothing. I don't deserve this. Come on now. I went through this already. Yeah, Tyreek, and then Kennedy.
I was gonna say that as a believer, being uncomfortable should be your best friend. At this point, at the stage where we at, well, stage where I'm at, uncomfortability is my best friend, whether it's at work, whether it's when I'm by myself, getting chastised through the word, whether it's on service. Being uncomfortable is the test. And we don't realize that when we're uncomfortable, we're growing, because we're getting put in a position where we're either gotta rely and trust on God and have nothing but faith in him, or two, we're going to think and react differently than how we normally would react. So one of the things that I've realized was, at first when we started outside, I was uncomfortable because I was like, it's COVID. But then after that, after I got over, COVID and, the fear of testing positive, which thank God I never did, I started being able to be myself more, talking to people, talking to different men, sharing God to them, sharing my experiences. And that brought me to a place where at first I was uncomfortable, because I was like, well, I ain't gonna lie, 7th Street was like my hood back home. It was dangerous. So now when we was going through there, I was like, well, I don't know about going up 7th Street, because them people crazy. I got a temper. I get angry fast. I'll fight you. And God had to show me that it's not like that. If I'm protecting you, then you're gonna go. And that is what brought out me being uncomfortable to now me being comfortable.
Okay.
Times where I'm talking to coach, I'm uncomfortable because it's like, why he throwing myself, why he throwing, me back at me, but it's to grow. So being uncomfortable should be your best friend.
All right, Kennedy.
No, ma'am, I didn't really want to say that. I'm just in agreement with the last comment that was said. That's all.
Okay. Did you want to make it in your own words?
No, I am good. Thank you.
Okay.
Basically, iron sharpens iron.
Iron sharpens iron. That's a good way to think about that. I was also thinking how when we are in these situations that we are uncomfortable with, or the things that we're not sure how they're going to turn out, that's when our faith in God is on display. Again, like sitting in that chair where we're not worried about whether it's going to hold us or not, or getting in your car and riding on the road feeling like, for the most part, as long as nothing crazy is happening and people are not acting crazy toward you, that car is going to protect you or give you a certain amount of protection, at least while you're on the road. You have faith in that, or else you couldn't get in the car, or else you couldn't sit on the chair, or else you couldn't do a lot of things if you didn't have that kind of faith in that. And what I'm understanding from this lesson is that we need to be that way about God. We need to look at God as, you know, the be all, end all, as Coach said, the master teacher, the master philanthropist, the master of everything. We need to look at him and determine that that's where our faith needs to be. And then because of that faith, our faith will be on display to other people in the world, other people in the country, all the people in the neighborhood. Okay, I'm going to read the point to you. And the point says, because our faith on display in hard times is what our topic is in this particular session. And the point says, God uses trials to mature your faith. And we kind of said it here this evening, that you grow from these trials. Nobody likes going through them. Nobody wants to go through them. However, when you get through it, you have grown. Maybe not as much as you'd like to have, but you have grown at least some. And if you paid attention to what you were supposed to pay attention to while you were going through it, you grew a lot. And that's what the trials are supposed to do, bring us closer to being more like Christ and less like ourselves. It is for the purpose of maturing us.
Making you better.
Making us better, making us better. All right, and I want to ask you guys a question. And that was the question that Mom T mentioned. What are the spiritual benefits of faith in trials? So Mom T, I'm to your question now. You said you want to read something to us. I'm ready for you. Did she go away? You on mute, Mom T.
Yeah, that's what I know. All right.
I'm ready for you.
Okay, I'll be reading on page 13, and it's under what are some of the spiritual benefits we stand to gain from experiencing trials. The testing of our faith works effectively to accomplish something specific. God's ultimate goal in testing is that our faith becomes mature and complete. So the trials we experience, he is developing an endurance. He's developing endurance, staying power. It is God's work to develop our spiritual muscles and resolve to stand firm. We therefore become unswerving from his purpose, even during the greatest trials and suffering, and our faith within like nothing.
Okay. So, and another way to answer that, the benefits of a faith in trials, a stronger faith, superior wisdom, a sure victory. And you might be saying, huh? Well, if you have a book, all I did was read the print in bold, because basically that's what this lesson is about, this particular session. So, you know, we want to have a stronger faith, we want superior wisdom, and we want a surer victory. And the paragraph that Mom just read was confirming that for us, that's what we're after. That's what God is after in our lives.
And that's why we have our trials.
Yes.
So we can develop, like Coach developed the muscles.
Yes, and we need them. We need spiritual muscles as well as physical muscles. All right. I have a question for you guys. And this is going to somehow connect us, I hope, back to the concept of a stronger faith, which is one of the subtitles in our lesson today. And that is, what is the difference between joy and happiness? The difference between joy and happiness. Joy and pain, sunshine and rain. The difference between joy and happiness.
You could say When it comes to happiness, it's something that you are. So you can be happy, you can be sad. Joy is something that you possess and that you obtain, and you have joy. And so there's a difference in how you approach it, because if it's something you have and contain with you, it's your duty to protect it and to keep it in your possession. Versus with happy, you could have it or not have it, you could be it, but it's not something that you hold on to and possess.
Okay, John A.
Mom, sometimes
Oh, I'm sorry.
happiness, excuse me, can I? Am I?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, happiness is something that comes with what's happening at the time. You can be happy because you got a new car. You could be happy because your daughter went to school and she's graduated. You can be happy because you bought a new house. Joy, you can have joy even in the midst of things not going the way that you want them to go. You can still have joy, but happiness is fleeting. It's not always there. But you can have joy at all times.
Okay, from Tyreek, he was saying joy, happiness is temporary and joy is, I didn't catch that last word. Yeah, John
I
A.
was saying joy, happiness is temporary, and joy isn't.
Okay,
Thank you.
it isn't. All right, John A., you had your hand up?
Actually, it's funny, we had this conversation. Mute yourself for a second, please. Okay, I'm echoing over there. So we were talking about this last week, and feelings and emotions, that's what we were talking about during class. And so I had Googled it, and feelings are low key but sustainable. Happiness is a feeling. Emotions are intense but temporary. Joy is an emotion. So I was like, oh, well, snap. So when you were talking about happiness and joy, and it's kind of like this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world can't take it away, because we equate joy with Christ and happiness with the world.
All right.
And they are not the same thing.
Okay, all right.
Now, even though based on the internet, which can be faulty, they're saying joy is temporary, but if we get our joy from Christ, it is not a temporary emotion.
That's it. Thank you.
We actually, as believers, can dictate how long we have joy.
Oh.
And we can also dictate who can affect our joy.
Where joy comes from.
Okay.
Based on our relationship with Christ. It's like, if you are firm in your relationship, what you know, who you know, who he is to you, then there's nothing or any, nobody or no thing that can steal your joy.
All right.
All right, that's good.
All right. I think I saw your hand up, Kennedy. Is that head bop saying that you are in agreement with what you've heard?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Totally in agreement.
Okay. And I think when you put it very simply, joy is permanent. And as you said, John A., it's permanent in regards to your relationship with God. If your relationship is strong with God, then your joy is much more permanent, and things from the world can't affect it. As someone already said, I think it was either Mom or Tyreek, was talking about the fact that you could be in things that are happening in an uproar. Everything looks like it's upside down and in a whirlwind, and you can still have joy, because it's not about that whirlwind that's going around you. It's about your relationship with Christ. And that's what gives you that peace, that calmness, that joy. And because you have that peace and that calmness, you have that joy. And it's all coming through your relationship with Christ. Anyone else?
I was just going to say, to kind of bring it all home, joy is what you have. Like, even when you said, I have joy, and happiness is a way of being or a state of being. I am. right? I am happy, and when I am happy, I have joy. When I have joy, I am happy.
Well, now let's look at what our book is saying about that, because it's coming from that statement about, and let's go back to the scripture where it says, consider it a great joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its full effect so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. So for those of you who have books, go over to page 12 and look under a stronger faith. And it's talking about, James got straight to the point. He called his readers and us to face our various trials with great joy. To be a joyful Christian is not an option. In fact, to consider it a great joy is an imperative command. Happiness and joy are easy when things are pleasant and going our way. But joy is not our first reaction in difficulties. The natural tendency is to respond to trials with fear, anger, or anxiety. Now, as he did 13 other times in his letter, James referred to his readers as my brothers and sisters. Well, I want to jump over to the next part here. He's saying that you don't go through it by yourself. And by saying my brothers and sisters are letting you know that others are going to go through it with you. The testing of our faith is, as we've already discovered and know at this point, is going to be about maturing us. But the one thing I want us to get, and I'm reading real quick, trying to get to it, that we become steadfast, that our faith is going to be strengthened, that the joy that we have is, as Janae has already said, and I thought quite nicely, is based on our relationship with God. That's where the joy comes from, not from a feeling necessarily, but on our relationship with God. When we know, when we are faithful and have our faith in Him, when everything is upside down, turning all around, things are flying all over the place, we can have joy in that situation. It's really easy to be happy when things are going right. And most times people are not happy if they don't go right. Where this is what this is trying to tell us, is what I'm seeing is trying to tell us, is that when things aren't going right, because of our relationship with God and with our relationship with Jesus, that we can still have joy. In the midst of all of that, we can still have joy.
And that's how our faith is displayed in hard times.
Yes, that is how our faith is displayed in hard times. When stuff is going awry, when it looks like a tornado is all around us, it looks like the world is flipping upside down. We got all kinds of strange things happening. Because of our faith in God and that He's in control and that He knows what He's doing, and our relationship with His Son, Jesus Christ, because of those two things, when all that nonsense is going on, we can have joy. We can have joy. And I personally, this is me personally, I believe that joy is not a temporary thing, because it can happen as long as our faith in God and our relationship with Jesus is strong. We can have that joy no matter what else is going on, no matter what else is going on in the world, in our lives, but it doesn't matter. We can still have that joy. Wherein happy depends on whether you are pleasantly, not pleasant, but whether you are in agreement. That's the word I want. Whether you are in agreement with the things that are going on around you, that's what makes you happy or sad. I mean, if everything is going your way, you're happy. If everything's not going your way, you're not happy. If everything is not going your way, you can still count it as joy because of your relationship with God and Jesus. And that's the only reason you can. Comments. And we are just about almost done here for tonight. Comments, thoughts.
I totally agree with what you said. I believe it's our relationship with the Lord Jesus. And as we grow in our relationship with Him, going through the different trials and tests that He allows us to, with the maturity that we experience, we are able to have joy. And it's considered a great joy.
Mhm.
King
Mhm.
James says, count it all joy.
Yes.
So when
Yes.
we go through these different trials and tests that we have in our lives, it's maturing us, but yet in the midst of them, with our relationship with the Lord as it's growing, we can count it joy because we know He's in control and He has the best for us.
And that's the part sometimes as in our human thought pattern, when we don't check ourselves, that is the part that we always seem to have trouble with. We keep forgetting that God is in control of it all. No matter what's going on, He's either sending it or He's just like turning His head and letting it happen. But He's still in control because at any moment He can stop it, change it, fix it, build it back up, or tear it back down. He can do whatever He decides He wants to do with it. He's always in control. And sometimes we forget that because we think we're in control. And because we're in control, we should be able to stop, fix, build, tear, amend anything that's going on in our lives. Wherein when we remember that God is in control,
We can't fix it.
and we really don't fix anything. We might put a Band-Aid on something, but if you want it fixed, you gotta lean on God. He can fix it. We just Band-Aid stuff. That's about as much as we can do. Pull a Band-Aid out and put it on there and think everything is okay. God will fix it if that's what His desire is, if that's what His plan is. Because remember, He's got plans for each and every one of us. Tyreek?
I was going to say that one of the things that we do is we forget that, and we look for instant gratification, and we look for something to happen right now for it to be fixed, and not let it happen again. When we put our hands in it, we get all entangled in it, and we dirty it all up. Then it's still it might feel good, or it might be good right now, but then a week, 2 weeks, a month down the line, when the same type of situation pops up again, you're going to handle it the same way because you didn't have faith and trust to give it to God and to persevere through it.
Yes.
Because
yes.
we didn't want to go through the motions.
Well, that's a good point to bring to us and to remind us about, because when we put our little fingers in it, we do mess it up. Because God has a plan for us, and all the time not all the time, we don't ever know what His plan is. I mean, God doesn't come to us with this master paper and says to us, I want you to read this, Tyreek, and tell me what you think. And whatever you've decided, then that will be the plan. That's not how it goes. God has His own plan, and His plan is not just about us. He has a master plan for everything, not just us. And in many ways, we are a piece of a puzzle. And if you don't, when all the pieces are not together, when the whole puzzle is not put together, you can't quite vision what the puzzle is going to look like. We're a piece. God knows what the whole puzzle is going to look like all the time. He already knows. And we're just pieces that are going to be put in there. And each of us have an important part. Just like when you have a puzzle, if you're missing a piece, the puzzle is not ever going to be complete. You have to have all the pieces, and you have to fit them together the right way in order for the puzzle to be complete. Well, God has the puzzle. He knows what the puzzle is supposed to look like. He knows what all the pieces are supposed to do. We are a part of that puzzle, but He sees the entire thing. We only see our little small thing, our little piece and what's going on with us. So sometimes when we try to take it into our own hands, we're messing up the puzzle. Yes, Tyreek.
I was gonna say, because I'm a sports guy, and as I hear you, as I'm hearing, I think about I think about basketball, right? And in order to win a championship and become a dynasty, like for example, the Golden State Warriors, when they first started out a couple years ago, they wasn't picked to do anything. They was losers. So they built through the draft. After they built through the draft, then they traded key players to help build around their core three that they had drafted in order for them to become a dynasty and to win multiple championships. The owners wasn't looking at just the small picture of a season or getting to the playoffs. They was thinking long term. They was thinking dynasty. They was thinking championship. They was thinking, you know, legacy. They was thinking they wanted to have their name, that era, you know, forfeited in history as one of the best teams in the NBA to ever be assembled, to ever form. And they was thinking long term. Just like what you said with God. God is not looking at us, you know, small term. He's not looking at us just day to day. He's thinking that he's looking at the grand scheme of things, the whole thing, the big picture, like the church. The church is supposed to be here because I need them in the long run to help build the community. And then after the community, I need them to build another community. And after that community to build and keep going and going and going. That's why he laid the foundation out now, have you go through a rough path. So when you get to the future and when it's time to move, you're able to move.
All right. All right. Well, folks, we have had some good discussion. Next week, we're going to finish up this particular lesson. I want you guys to keep in mind that faith on display in hard times is just the first session, the first lesson, if you will. And there are 4 or 5 others that come behind it that is going to help us put our faith on display. If you do not have this book, we will have it on Sunday. We will have copies of this book on Sunday, and you can purchase this book for $5. That's all. $5 is all it takes. And you can have this book, which will give you then an opportunity to read all the stuff that I don't read, to look at the questions that I don't ask, and to understand how this lesson can be fitted into our lives, what this lesson is telling us that we need to do if we have not done, what we need to strive for, what we need to make sure we understand how to do for each day, for our day-to-day living and for the future. Okay, and with that being said, we're going to close out for tonight. And I'm expecting that you will be with me next week so that we can finish up. And before we close out, are there any prayer requests tonight? Prayer requests? As always, we always keep Pastor and First Lady and their family in prayer always. Pastor carries a pretty heavy load. I think sometimes we don't really get how much of a load he carries. I don't think I understood it for a while, but I was doing some reading, not only in scripture, but in other places. And it talks about the fact that God is going to hold him responsible for us. He's our shepherd, and God is going to hold him responsible for us. And what we need to do is not make his shepherd, being a shepherd for us, so taxing that the load gets so heavy that he cannot carry it by himself and can't even carry it with help. Okay, that's not our duty. We're not supposed to make it the worst thing that can happen to him. So we need to keep him in prayer, keep him lifted in prayer all the time, because he truly needs our prayers. He carries a big load and a heavy load.
Keep Sister Deb in prayer.
Let's keep Sister Deb in prayer. And yeah, let's just keep Sister Deb in prayer. She may not talk about it, may not be saying it, but we need to keep her supported and held up in prayer. Any others?